Any
request more
questions?
detail. Not any questions. I'll answer it. You may not like the vagueness of the answer, depending on whether or not it's about cycle plan, confidential information, and future products. But I will start with, yes, we rebranded the organization that I work for at Ford Motor Company to Ford Racing this week. I did not change the entire presentation. We're quickly trying to catch up, and I have to buy an entire new wardrobe and rebrand the garage as well as everything else. The nice thing is there's still some old Ford Racing banners up there that can really help. But it's not the same Ford Racing logo, so everything's changing. So we're going to a new blue and a new font for Ford Racing. The font should look a little bit familiar because the lettering for racing is actually the font we use for the FLRD on the front of Raptors. So that R is the deck R that's on that, and then everything else matches the lettering of that structure. So the Raptor influenced the overall branding, and that's for a very good reason. The Raptor is actually the profit generator within the portfolio of Ford Racing, in the same way that F-150 and Super Duty are the profit generators for total Ford Motor Company. So, Raptor is a very big part of our portfolio when it comes to the financial viability.
That's taking the place of Ford Performance?
Yes, so Ford Racing will take the place of Ford Performance. It does encompass more than just the motorsport part of Ford. It incorporates the production vehicle side of the business too, including Raptors, GTDs, performance Mustangs, etc. That portfolio will continue to grow. The naming is part of a signal that there's a renewed interest to leverage the motorsports part of Ford and grow the production vehicles that are influenced by the motorsports. So with that, then on this program, which is one of our most recent programs and the most exciting, obviously for those that are track rats like us, the GTD started out as a passion project by two individuals that really wanted to take Mustang to the Ford GT had a heritage that was undeniable when we did that program to go back for the 50th anniversary and try and move on again. But a lot of people really wanted to leverage the Mustang brand. Due to the homologation requirements in 2016, that body style was superior to the Mustang, and we chose to do the Ford GT. There was still a want to do Mustang, and so as homologation requirements evolved, maybe due to some negotiation behind the scenes, Mustang became a viable solution to go compete in the GT class. A lot of other manufacturers were trying to also tie their race cars more to their production cars, which made it easier for us to actually make competitive products. So that was the genesis of the GTD program. It was tied to the GT3 class race program, and naturally became a production vehicle because if you understand what we're trying to do with our race program, it's base race cars on production vehicles. Mustang Silhouette, we want to take it to Le Mans and compete because Mustang is our sports car icon. It is the most popular sports car in the world by volume. Go race, learn how to make it better because you're competing. Then flow those lessons back into the next generation of production cars and make them better. So the technology evolution goes both directions. As you continue to try to compete both in the marketplace and on the racetrack, everybody wins in the end by having better luck. So GTD had some very specific goals. Lap times on the track is the obvious one. We wanted to do it with an amazing amount of power in a traditional V8 American muscle cars. So a different approach than say a Porsche GT3 RS, but with the goal of exceeding Porsche GT3 RS performance. Okay. So taking a big V8 front engine vehicle, adapting that to actually do the same dynamic performance targets. Talk a little bit about how you do that. It's an interesting business. So, as I said, taking the great things from the race cars, but then realizing that race car performance is limited by commodities environments, competitive tensions. If you relax all the requirements and then exceed all those boundaries that the homologation series puts on you, you're going to make a better car for customers. They're not get those. So power improves, chassis improves. We can give you variable rate suspension settings to balance comfort and performance. You can't do a race car because it's not legal. Homologation requirements, all sorts of improvements that come by stretching race car to road. And then just a bit about design. So the design of the car is all up there. The proportion is very traditional American. Right? So it always wanted to have that wide stance, not only for aerodynamics, but it's part of the medicine appearance of that car. And then everything flows from the dynamic needs to functional aerodynamics. This is an interesting debate. If you work with any product development cycle, working through the artistic process and actually driving form to follow function is a huge, because the aesthetic understanding of what the eye sees versus what is actually functionally better, especially in a computer model situation, it is a tension that is hard to overcome. But because we put design studio members who were actually passionate track rat race car drivers, we always won every argument that came down to, if you do that, it won't be as good function versus what you think looks better instead. We didn't always choose the answer that was obvious to get the performance improvement. We always still wanted a great looking product, but never did we accept a degradation of performance for ourselves, which I can't say is true for every product that we make. So it's a huge thing to get the right people. So, as I said, one of the goals was performance. We don't always go to the Nürburgring to try and set records with all our products, but that was one of the unique targets set for this product to help establish the credibility given where we are trying to position the product. The days that you can run on the Nürburgring are limited to when it's available for private test days versus public driving days. You're then dependent on weather. Ideal track conditions are not going to always be available on the day you happen to have been on the test. It rains a lot in that part of Germany. But track's not great for record lap times. It might be raining on one end of the track and not on the other, because it is a 13-mile track. So there's a bit of luck that comes into being set a record time. The first time that was set met the objective to be in less than 7 minutes, but that was actually a test run that nobody was actually planning. It was a trial. Let's just go out and run the car, get ready. We're going to run tomorrow. We expect better conditions, and better conditions never came. It was the end of the season. It ended up getting cold, winter, snowing, icing. Never had a chance to do that season. So that became the actual record-breaking time. Didn't meet our expectations for what the people of the car were based on simulation runs. So we knew we would eventually go back and try and get the conditions to improve, which then resulted in the use of 52 time that we've seen. What's interesting to me is that everybody says the competition improves the entire product line competitively. So the fact that GM is taking full up and actually run in a different class, technically they ran a prototype, not a full production spec vehicle. So there's no, if you run a full production vehicle, they actually don't validate. The European homologation for validate the car means exactly what you sell, and they make sure that you're not cheating by taking the out of parts or running slicks instead of got tires or whatever it is. So our car went through the production class. GM decided they wanted the prototype class. I'm not saying that they didn't, but they modified it, I don't know. But they ran a class where they didn't have to be homologated, so they're actually different ones. But they did run a time. It was faster than the 652 in the car. I'm excited about that. I think it's a good thing, because I think that means that I'll have the leverage in the team to go try and beat them. Right? Like more riding.
So the one that is 400 horsepower more, right? It's that bad.
That is not an excuse. That's
There's
just
a
a
lot
fact.
about this
That's a
car.
fact, yeah.
I didn't know.
So yes, they have more power, but that means they have faster car. Like, regardless of how they got there, they have faster cars. So that means I have an excuse to try and go make another faster car. Right? I might get there through a different solution, but that's the exciting part of the process. So the car here that you see is actually the entry car. It doesn't have the track pack options on it. It still is a reasonably fast car on a track, but it doesn't have active aero. So the rear wing doesn't have the equivalent of drag reduction system from Florida one. Interesting. Cool. Try again. So this car doesn't have the drag reduction or the underbody panels, the front wickers on the front fascia, nor the carbon fascia. When you get the track package, you also get magnesium wheels for lightweighting. So this car had carbon fiber wheels for lightweighting as its option over aluminum. In order to stretch our technology development, we decided to go after magnesium as an alternative technology for weight savings. In theory, because you can do shape optimization that you cannot do in carbon fiber due to the carbon fiber manufacturing requirements, magnesium can achieve a superior strength to weight ratio for not true in all parts of manufacturing, but because of the shape requirements and functional requirements of the wheels, we actually think we can get more optimum design out of mag, which is why we are running that this car. So additionally, so in the active aerodynamics, obviously the wing is the easy part to see, and as you drive, if you're driving on the street, which I know doesn't happen very often for everybody, but you'll see that that opening between the two planes closes at lower speeds and it opens at higher speed. At the same time, the front aerodynamics also change to keep the balance of the front and rear, changing the airflow through the lower part fascia to the front suspension is all redone versus any of the other Mustangs, including GT500 and Dark Horse. The links are all different. So car gets wider, which is obvious. You can see it. It's part of the overall track and proportion for the car. for handling, but it also gives us a fully different suspension geometry with that extra 4 inches of width. And then brake rotors get even more massive than the GT500 wheels, which I thought was really were huge when we used that car. We're now up to 20-inch carbon ceramic brakes. The brake rotor is 20 inches, right? Most cars have never been 20 inches.
What's that room kind of thing?
Yeah. The rear suspension is even more trick because the tire is so wide, it's such a much package space that it's come inboard that there was no space to actually fit a traditional shock coil spring. So in order to find a package space to put in the suspension for the ride and hang on capability to handle the torque coming out of that engine into packaging spring horizontally. So something that's done in other race cars, because it's considered Formula One. Not very traditional to be done in a production field. So another amazing part. So at some point I'll show you the little party trick, carbon copy trick. We'll start with the car, and you get to see as the variable ride height changes by 50 millimeters, 2 inches. Those horizontal spring packages actually are on 2 electric motors that will compress one of the springs, taking it out of loop, completely changing the dynamics of the vehicle as it flows. Changing spring rates and damping rates for the vehicle. And you effectively got 2 completely different vehicle suspension setups. So the nice thing is you've got a nice little plexiglass window in there to see that trick suspension. It was kind of an accident in the end that is there. It wasn't designed as a thought of, oh, we want a way to see this really expensive premium suspension. It was there because we needed to add the structure for body stiffness to put, to close out that opening that's on Mustangs today because it's a pass-through in the trunk of the rear seat. We wanted to close that off and actually make the body stiffer. And we needed a way to open it up to service the suspension. The 2 functional requirements ended up driving this great plastic window through a discussion with the studio as we were asking them to help us design the surface for that. And then we told them, oh, by the way, it has to be movable. They said, oh, why don't we just make it see-through? Because that would be awesome, because look what's behind it. So it was actually the studio design director realizing that the functionality of the suspension, which we normally never even showed how the suspension is, because that's not something that we really care about, right? It's underbody engineering, not studio surface. But again, because we have really passionate people that actually go race, the studio design director understood what jewelry these massive, complex suspension systems are. So the body and exterior. So the core of the vehicle, the part that you don't see in this picture, in the middle of the vehicle is the same steel and aluminum composite Mustang safety structure that we build and flat commission and ship to all Mustang customers. That part is very fundamental to keep consistent with all Mustangs. So we don't have to do what we do with this car, which is in an all-new crash development program, which makes me cry every time you see one of these going to the crash barrier, because you're destroying a crash thing. This one we didn't have to crash much cars because the crash structure is actually already even out on all Mustangs. We just changed everything around. All the blue carbon fiber bits, but we took all the weights in and got the aero improvements and functional improvements to actually fit this new chassis and powertrain system are new, but we were able to save core foundation like a so and underbody cover all that structure for it. Powertrain. At one point I'm going to open up the engine bay here and compare it to the GT500. You'll be amazed at how much more stuff is crammed into the GTD, even though they both have 5.2 liter supercharged. That's a lot of extra equipment that went in to get to 800 plus horsepower versus only 600. Right? Incremental improvements once you get to those power levels are not trivial. The biggest obvious contributor to the power increase is in dry sump, right? The dry sump plus the air intake improvements, larger displacement in the supercharger are the primary uplifts, but there's also really trick emissions compliance matters, things like secondary air induction, forcing air into the back two cylinders at startup in order to light up the cats faster to get to the particular emission compliance that you would otherwise be able to meet with that big an engine pumping that much gas for heavy fast startup. Rear end, all new DCT, downward Tremec, 8 gears for weight distribution as well as performance. The GT500 has a DCT, but forward mid-mounted instead. So obviously the weight balance distribution of that is the key element of the change by putting that Tremec transmission in the rear instead of in the mid. And as I alluded, I can't allude to exactly what's coming next, but I can tell you that we're motivated based on the fact that the bar's been set again, and now it's time for us to. With that, we can talk in more detail, Q&A one-on-one, and get a chance to open up the cars and talk a little bit. Hopefully that helps a little bit, gives you a little perspective on kind of what the GT program was.
Why a supercharger? I know they're notorious for getting hot and thing going in limp mode and all that kind of stuff. What about this thing when it's out there for a hot day running like some of these guys run? They're just running into the ground.
Yeah.
Is it going to go into limp mode?
No.
The computer's mad?
Yeah.
Or?
And I think that's one of the reasons we decided to run the ring, is that suppresses you for a very long period of time. And if you were going to go into limp mode and you're on the extremes of performance, it would happen at the ring. It's going to happen. You're not relaxing the car there. So, yes, superchargers require you to put the coolant back in, but if you do the coolant, you can make it. And we're running the same thing in Baja, right? And that's not a cool thing. We learned how to manage the supercharger.
Well, they're running superchargers in Baja too?
Yeah, the Raptor R.
Oh, the Raptor R, that's right.
Supercharged.
Yeah,
Which we run every year in Baja.
Here's a bunny.
Yeah.
What's the weight of the vehicle? Good weight?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I know it's not optimized for what you. It's not.
It's heavy.
It's at least.
It's heavier than most of the vehicles in that competitive class because of the approach of taking a big V8 as this. Right? So there are other people that would do it with a lighter weight overall car with a lighter engine, small displacement, etc. But that's not the formula that is possible.
Okay.
Cool.
Show us the party trick.
You want to see it? Okay.
Yeah.
How about you show us? You want to see it? You? Okay.
Oh, me.
Sure. Sure.
That's line block. Okay. That's the right button. While you're flipping through.
Okay, well, I have short legs.
That's
That's correct.
Okay, right.
No, so that's where actually all your information, that's where you come to about the computer. Very much.